He still had this detached grey expression on the following Wednesday, as he stood in a bare, dirty room on the south side of Cornhill, waiting to be led out to the pillory. The sheriff's men and the constables in charge of him were all clustered together at the window. They were intensely nervous, and they kept up a continual flow of talk. He did all what we'd done days ago, right after the sentence. The news has had time to go down to Land's End and up to John O'Groats. And every fucking port in the kingdom. Chatham, Sheerness, Portsmouth, Plymouth. Sweetings, Harry's quite blocked up. So's Castle Alley and Moore's coming in. They ought to have sent for the soldiers long ago. We've 4 constables, 4 scavengers and 1 beadle in the ward. What can we do with such a crowd? Well, yeah, listen, I shall take my wife and children down to live the other side of Epping. They keep pouring up from the river. There are the chaps in the press tender itself with their bloody cutlasses and bludgeons. Christ have mercy. They're blocking each side of the chain with carts. God help us. Well, why don't you give the word? Why don't Mr. Essex give the word? They're going outrageous down there. We should all be scribed. St. Paul's and the city churches had tolled 12 some 5 or 10 minutes ago, and the crowd in Cornhill was becoming impatient. 8 bells, cried some. 8 bells there, turn the glass and strike the bell. Bring him out! Bring him out! Bring him out! Let's have a look at him! Shouted the leader of another group. He was the leader of a band hired by some disappointed stock jobbers, and like his fellows he carried a bag of stones. Bondon turned sharp upon him and said, "What are you doing here, mate?" "I come to see the fun." "Then just you go and see the fun at Hockley. In the hole, that's where, Cully, because why? Because this is for seamen only, you see. Seamen only, not landsmen." The man looked at Bondon and at the many closed, dead serious, lowering faces behind him. Brown, tough, often earringed, often pigtailed. He looked at his own people, a pale and weedy crew, and with hardly a pause he said, "Well, I don't care. Have it your own way, sailor." Davis, a very big, ugly, dangerous man who had sailed with Jack in many commissions, had an even shorter way of dealing with Gray's gang of genuine bruisers, who stood out most surprisingly in their flash clothes and low-crowned hats, among the now almost solid naval mass. Most of the citizens, even the apprentices and the street boys, hawking pails of filth, had withdrawn beyond the barrier or to neighbouring buildings. Davis, with his 4 uglier brothers and a dumb negro boatswain's mate, went straight to them, and a thick voice, choking with fury, said, "Bugger off!" He watched them go, and then shouldered his brutal way through the shipmates to where Stephen was standing by the steps of the pillory with the few pugilists his thief-taker had managed to engage, men equally conspicuous. To them he said, "You bugger off too, will you know harm, gentlemen? You bugger off too." There was white spittle at his mouth, and he was breathing very hard. Stephen nodded to his men, and they sidled away towards St. Michael's. As they reached the church, its clock struck the quarter, and Mr. Essex gave the word at last. Jack was led out of the dark room into the strong light, and as they guided him up the steps, he could see nothing for the glare. "Your pen. Here, sir, please," said the sheriff's man in a low, nervous, conciliating voice, "and your hand, just here." The man was slowly fumbling with the bolt, hinge and staple, and as Jack stood there with his hands in the lower half-rounds, his sight cleared. He saw that the broad street was filled with silent, attentive men, some in long togs, some in shore-going rig, some in plain frocks, but all perfectly recognizable as seamen. And officers by the dozen, by the score, midshipmen and officers. Babington was there immediately in front of the pillory, facing him with his hat off, and Pullings, Stephen, of course, Mowat, Dundas. He nodded to them with almost no change in his eye and expression, and his eye moved on. Parker, Rowan, Williamson, Harvey, and men from long, long ago, men he could scarcely name. Lieutenants and commanders putting their promotion at risk. Midshipmen and masters' mates their commissions, warrant officers their advancement. The head of a trifle forwardly, sir, murmured the sheriff's man. And the upper half of the wooden frame came down, imprisoning his defenceless face. He heard the click of the bolt, and then, in the dead silence, a strong voice cried, "Off, hats!" With one movement, hundreds of broad-brimmed, tarpaulin-covered hats flew off, and the cheering began. The fierce, full-throated cheering he had so often heard in battle. Now, in the words of David Allan Coe, let's get drunk and screw.